Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here with us today for All of Your Small Business, a webinar series hosted by the Greenville ENC Alliance. We really appreciate you being here today. My name is Baylee Fox. I'm the Business Development Manager at the Greenville ENC Alliance, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. So if you're not familiar with the Greenville ENC Alliance, let me provide a little bit of background. We're a public-private partnership which is focused on promoting economic development in Greenville-Pitt County through industry recruitment, expansion and retention, development of sites and buildings, marketing and promotion of the community, workforce development, which also includes talent attraction and retention, and small business and entrepreneurship efforts, which is why we're all here today. We're excited to host this webinar series on a monthly basis. We have speakers of various topics to help small business owners and entrepreneurs start, maintain, and grow their business here in Greenville-Pitt County. Today, we're honored to have Jeff Sunnison, Director of Client Services for FT Locations, joining us today. Jeff will be discussing the data tool, which is featured on the Greenville ENC Alliance website, and highlighting how this tool can assist both small business owners and prospective entrepreneurs in the Greenville MSA through data which is reflective of our local communities. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we dive into the programming today. If you have a question during the presentation, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll have a time at the end for a Q&A at the end of Jeff's presentation, but you're welcome to ask questions as we move throughout the presentation, and it will be addressed at the end. Please stay on mute during the presentation, and this webinar will be recorded, so if you have to leave early, we'll send out a link within 24 hours of the webinar for you to review. Without further delay, however, let me move into introducing Jeff. So Jeff is the Director of Client Services at FT Location. He's been with FT Locations, which formerly was GIS Planning, for 20 years and is intimately knowledgeable with clients and what they need for a successful implementation of the services that they have been offered. He participates in product development and ensures that clients' needs are addressed. And Jeff's educational background is in geography and geographic information systems, which is GIS. And in fact, Jeff started FT Locations as the technical lead on managing client geospatial data. Jeff continues to be the GIS lead for client mapping, as well as the national data layers that we manage in Zoom Prospector Enterprise. Jeff is equally passionate about client success and takes pride in cultivating strong relationships with all clients, both big and small. Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we're really excited to hear your presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Baylee. So yeah, today what we want to do is take a look at the Zoom Prospector service that we've implemented for Greenville and the Alliance. And I'll just kind of step through primarily the Zoom Prospector tool, but then there's some other pieces in there that are also available that we've also implemented on the website. So if you go to the encalliance.com page, pretty much everything you see under data center here, these are all parts of our Zoom Prospector service that we provide for the website and as a service to basically anyone that comes to the website. To start, I'm going to really focus on Zoom Prospector, which we're going to find with the property search and analysis, which was the page that was already up there. So with Zoom Prospector, we have, a site selection database, but with that, we've cultivated partnerships with many different vendors. And so you're able to go in and analyze a location. So you're not only seeing if it's the right type of space, but seeing if everything around it matches your needs here. So I'll first focus on the property search piece, which is, fairly typical for a lot of different commercial property websites. And that's what you'll see when the site first opens here. You'll see over on the left, we have our property results here. And right now we're just showing everything. You can see there's 201 current listings in Pitt County. And over here on the map, these bubbles represent a couple things. So the green bubbles represent land, and the blue bubbles represent available buildings. And then the number inside just simply represents a cluster of properties. So that way, if I click on that 80, it'll break down into smaller clusters until you get to the actual individual properties themselves. When you see an individual property here, you can click on it, get information about it. You could go directly into the property report. Also over here, if you're searching and you want to refine that search, you can search by city. You can look for buildings versus sites. You can put in a size restraint, different types of property. And then over here under all filters, you can even put in things like a keyword, or maybe you want to find properties that are type of incentive zone. Really, you can kind of filter it however you want. So for this example, I'll go in and I'll just go ahead and select retail sites. And that's going to pull up our available listings. And then down here, you'll see our results over here on the left. And then we can go into any of these here. So I'm going to just select this first one here. And this is going to take us into the property report. Now with the property report, we have some things we can do here. Right here is if we click into the image, this is going to take us into the slideshow of all the photos available for the property. Then down below, we'll see all the information about the property. And these reports will vary. So we're not going to show a bunch of empty fields. We don't have a standard form. And then if only half of it is filled out, we're going to show the whole thing. We condense it, and then we only show the results that actually have data assigned to them in here. And then we can see here that we also show the contact information for the property. This property and most of the properties on the site are provided by Carnum, as well as Catalyst here. Actually, this should be Catalyst here, which is Moody's. They provide a data feed to the organization that we consume into the site. I do know also, I should point that out, properties that are put into North Carolina, EDP and C, those also flow into the site. And then I have noticed that Baylee has put some listings in as well. So they also have the ability to supplement that, those properties with anything that might be outside that data feed. Now with these listings, and anything that we do on here, we can share it. So this is really important. Anything that you've done on the site, if you've turned on some map layers, if you're looking at a specific report, this URL here is going to bring users back to exactly the scenario that you've put together here. So it's a great way to show exactly what you want someone to see in there. Most of our reports can be exported to PDF or Excel. So as we explore and look through these, I'll showcase that. And then to wrap up with the property piece here, you have a couple other things you can do. So for example, if you wanted to get an idea of what that looks like on Google Street View, you could click on that. It's going to take you into that image, and we're going to be able to see that location. And we even show where the property pin is in there, so you can make sure you're looking at the correct property, and then you can drive around and look at the location. The virtual tour here option, I'm not going to click on it here, but it takes you over to Google Earth. The 3D rotation is just simply going to put you in that 3D where you can rotate around the location and look at it as well and get more of a bird's eye aspect for it. Now with the properties, you can also do a couple things here. So one of the things we can do when we're looking at a property is we can save those to our saved results here. So we have the save results folder here. If I'm looking at something and I like it, I can have all these folders that I create. I can put that in Project Blue, and you don't have to be in the actual specific property here. So if you're just browsing through the listings and you want to add some of those in here, you can easily do that. So I can come in here and select those properties that maybe match what I'm looking at. The other cool thing is if you go back into your save results and look at those here, you can share these with someone. So if you send someone this link, they'll come back and see these specific properties that you're trying to showcase here. And then you also have this compare option, which I really like. So if I come in here and I click compare, it's going to bring in side-by-side comparison of those properties where you can look and see the similarities and the differences in there. Again, you can export these also to PDF, Excel, a lot of different options there. Again, I always recommend to share it, lets them come back and be able to do the more advanced reporting on the different tools there. So let's go back into a listing here. Now I want to showcase all the data that we bring in through our partnerships and with Zoom Prospector here. So I'll just kind of step through each one here. So when we're looking at a property, we're looking at the data either by drive time or by a radius. So if I click on occupation data, this is going to show us compensation for different skill sets. This data is provided by Lightcast, which is formerly MZ. We're defaulting to a 10-mile radius here. I can scroll down. I can see those median annual wages here for those different job categories. You can also look at this by drive time, as I mentioned. So if I wanted to see, hey, what does the data look like at a 10-minute drive time? We can put that in here as well. Now, I know with compensation, that probably won't change that much, but on these other reports, it is very useful information. I do like to highlight and kind of skip over to this other report here, which is very similar, because they both strengths and their weaknesses here. So with the occupation data here, the strength is that it comes from Lightcast, very reputable, really the best at what they do here. And they also provide it at the zip code level. And so it's a little more, it'll change a little more in different areas. Now, the downside here is you can't drill into these different management occupations. And that's why if we click over here on the wage data, this data is coming directly from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a really good source as well. But really the benefit here, and the reason we keep both in here, is I can then drill down in, and I'm not just averaging everything in one general type of skill set. I can see all those different skill sets based on the type of, in this example, of management occupation. The occupation data from Lightcast is updated twice a year, and the wage data is updated annually. All our reports, also important to note, down in the footer, we do showcase them here, where they came from when they were last updated. And might as well bring it up now. If you ever click on the help here, the help is going to, if I go into and I can look up these different things, we're very clear and transparent with where the data comes from. So again, any of these reports we're looking at, you can come in, you can see where the data is coming, technical documentation. So back vendor, which is Applied Geographic Solutions. This data is also updated twice a year. Now with the demographics, you can scroll down and see things like age distribution, ethnicity, education attainment, labor force status, and income distribution, all that typical demographic information. And again, this is where it becomes a little more helpful. I could turn this up to, maybe I want to see what's in a 50-mile radius. Like maybe I need to see what my labor shed is. I can do that. Same thing with drive time. I know popular drive time is usually about 45 minutes. I could put in a 45-minute drive time. I can get the actual population that would be served within 45 minutes here. And the other thing about the drive time is we can look at it by a car. We can look at it for more if it's trucking and distribution, and we even have a walk time in there. And you can even adjust by time of day, day of the week. The demographics and the consumer expenditures also include a 5-year projection. So you can also see what we're projecting 5 years out. The labor force data, this is looking at the labor force two different ways. We're looking at it by employee here, so I can see the total number of employees within that 10-mile radius. Now, what's important to know about the employees here, this is saying how based on where people live. So it doesn't mean they're working here. It just means of the people working here, these are the different categories they are occupations that they are employed in. So I can see that in a couple different groups. I can look at, applied geographics occupation classes. I can also scroll down and look at that by SIC or NAICS code. So whichever one you're most familiar working with, you can see those categories there. Then again, we can also see this data by businesses, and this is going to show us and this is actually looking at businesses within that 10-mile radius. And we can see the total number of businesses, and then the total establishments by size, and then the total establishments based on those different same categories there. Again, remember, the share tool always brings users back. So if you see a really great report, you can grab it here. You could bookmark it for yourself, or you could, send it over to someone. Consumer expenditures. This is looking at where people are spending their money. So we can see here within that 10-mile radius, if we look at something like apparel, how much is being spent on apparel? And then it even breaks it down into different types of apparel. This report really covers most spending within households here. Again, shelter, household furnishing, all those types of things. The other thing I haven't shown that you can do with those previous two reports is you can turn on a heat map. So this right here is showing us that there's, $27 million, 27, roughly $27 million being spent on men's apparel within this 10-mile radius annually, but it's not showing us where that's being spent. So if I turn on our heat map here, this is going to let us know if there's a concentration of where that's spent. Now, when we're zoomed out, we're looking at this at the zip code level. But if I zoom in a bit, we'll be going down to the block group level. So I can see within that area if there is a specific, here's my, sorry, I scroll down a little bit so you can see the legend here. If there's a specific area that it does have more spending. So we can see right in here, that location may be good if I'm looking for men's apparel, opening a men's apparel store. And again, this is another example. If I had this heat map on, if I click share, this is what users will come back and see. All right. The next report here is the business report. This data is provided by Data Axle, which is formerly Info Group. And this is looking at actual business points for the entire county. And again, we can look at this by radius in here. Now, by default, we do go down to 1 mile just because the map starts to look a little busy, but we can definitely turn this up and it'll load up our businesses here. And you do need to give it a second if you're, basically we're going to be pulling all the data for Greenville and all the surrounding communities in here, but we'll let it load up here. And we can see the map gets a little busy here, but one of the nice things you can do is you can come down here, you can look at your results, you can turn off all those. Maybe I'm looking for something in an accommodation and food services. Maybe I want to see where all the full service restaurants are just to see where there's a distribution pattern. I can turn on just that section here. And then I can even drill down in to those full service restaurants. And this will let me see the name of the actual business, estimated sales, and the estimated number of employees in there. And then again, if you also, another option is to just simply click on the map, that'll pull up information on that point as well. If I hover over here, it's going to hover it over on the map, so it's easy to locate that. The other nice thing you can do when you're looking at the business report here, especially if it's getting a little bit busy and maybe you want to filter that a little bit, you can filter your results. So I'm going to go ahead and turn everything back on here. And we're going to turn this on to a 10-mile radius again. And we can come in here. Maybe we want to show our larger employers. So I'm going to put just employers with 100 employees or more. So now this lets me really pare those results down and see those. And if I come in here, I can see if there's a section, so healthcare and social services. And then I can see if there's anything that specifically stands out here. So again, there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can also look at it by annual revenue. You can put in actual NAICS codes, and then we have our industry clusters here. Got a couple more reports here. The talent report. This data is provided by two different sources for the degrees. So not the trade schools, but for the actual associates and higher degrees. We report that in here. We can see the top 5 programs. So we can see health professionals and related programs, and then liberal arts, and then business management. We can also look at it by the top 5 universities. And then if we scroll down here, we can see all those separate categories. So maybe I want to see where all my bachelors are. And if I scroll down, I could open business and management. I can go into a specific, this is almost like filtering down into the business data. I can filter down into a specific category here of degrees, and then I can see where most those graduates are coming from. So if I'm looking for a specific skill set, I can drill down and see where they're coming from. Now, this data is coming from the National Centers of Education Statistics. The data is updated annually. It does tend to be about 1 or 2 years back. It takes them a while to compile and then release that data. The next option here is the trade schools. Now, this isn't going to have every trade school. So the data that we get here is from, if you scroll down to the bottom, Employment and Training Administration of the U.S. Department of Labor. This data is, you have to basically be certified, and they add you to their program. So the business or the schools that are in here are, reputable and have passed that certification. So I can come down here, and if I'm looking for a specific skill set, maybe I need, a bus driver or truck driver, I can see where those schools are. And again, I might be able to recruit from within there. The last 2 reports are really just taking summary data from all these here and putting them together in our infographic. So based on the location of the property, it'll pull up the related city profile. And when we go into the city profile here, again, as I mentioned, we get that highlight of the community so we can see people. We can also, it is interactive where you can go through the, previous years. We can look at population growth over time, education attainment, labor force, talent. So all that information's in there. And then the same thing you can do over here with the county. And this report is going to be basically the same for every property because it's a single county client. So we can see all the information for Pitt County here. Now, there is another thing you can do. So we showed looking at all this data by around a property or by drive time, by radius or drive time. We can also look at it just by community. So if we go into our explore communities, we have basically a report for every community in Pitt County. And then we also have data for the county as a whole. So if I want to go down back to maybe want to use Greenville again. So if we want to just look at data for Greenville as a whole, we can click on view details. And this will take us into Greenville, and you can see those same list of reports are available in here. And again, now everything's based on the city and not that radius or drive time. So you can pull up individual communities here. So for example, maybe I want to go over to Grimesland. I can pull up that community. What's also important here is, these different municipalities can link back to this. This is kind of their report that is showcased on the ENC Alliance Zoom Prospector. The other thing you can do when you're in Explore Communities, it's kind of hidden in there, is if we come down to our map tools here and we do area analysis, we can actually come in here and draw whatever area we want. And in fact, if you're going to do that, what I probably recommend is switching to the county because it's going to be hard to see with all those lines, but we can draw that area we want, and then we can analyze and just look at the area that we've selected there. So again, you can really go in and analyze any piece of the county if you like. The other thing that you can do when you're under Explore Communities, or actually not Explore Communities, but you can compare your communities. And I already lined these up because I want you to sit here and watch me type. But here's what that interface looks like. You basically come in here, you add locations, and then you hit the comparison report. And what that will do is it's going to compare the communities side by side. So here, if I scroll down a little bit, I can see we have, the population for, let's scroll this down a little bit here so we see that better. So we can see here we have, Greenville versus Rocky Mount versus New Bern. This is just looking at population. But then we can do things like we can go into our consumer expenditures. And what's nice here is you can look at by household, they may level out. Now, obviously the ones with the bigger population are going to really stand out here. But if I go into the household, that lets me know, are there some comparisons in spending habits? And, how do those line up? So there's a whole, basically all those different options we had under the demographics, labor force, and consumer expenditures. You can then come in and look at these and compare them side by side. And you can have actually, there's really no limit. We recommend kind of trying to keep it within 8, but you can see you can scroll through those results here. And you can also export these or print them out to PDF. Back here to the property search page. One last thing to add on this is the map layers that we include over here. So if I go over here to map layers, we manage national data sets in here. So for example, we have things like broadband. So if it was important to see where maybe fiber is located, we have that in here. Maybe you want to look at things like incentives, like federal opportunity zones. We can see those. I say explore these at your leisure, but all of these basically we manage and we update. They're typically federally sourced. Some of them, if they have a map pop up and you click on the map bubble, you can see where they come from. But also if you need to see where the source of some of this data is, you can go back to the help center, and I'm going to just type in map layers. And this will take me to the map layer sources, and then it'll let us know, and it has links back to where we found that data and how we manage it. Now, in terms of these other reports I mentioned in here, you really saw all the data by showing Zoom Prospector in here. That sometimes it's because there's so much data in Zoom Prospector, users may not actually find that. So we do break them out as individual widgets here. So if you wanted to come in and just look at a community overview, you could click on the community overview option. And again, we're just going to pull in that infographic that we had in Zoom Prospector. And you can also change that location. So I could come in here, maybe I want to show it for, you know, Falkland here. That would pull up the infographic for them. And then I could simply click on the share option, and I can actually share this report with someone and bring them back to the infographic for Falkland there. That was a small community I pulled up there, obviously. Then all those same reports. So basically think of every report that you saw in Zoom Prospector, you can pull them up as individual widgets. Again, you can tailor this to the area you want, and you could share that. They're all going to default to Pitt County. But again, you can change that location to any community within Pitt County. And so that kind of highlights everything in there. So really what, the benefit that the ENC Alliance is providing is they're licensing this on the behalf of everyone, so they can go in here, showcase the area, do all this analysis. And this is a free tool for anyone that comes to the website. I think that's it for me, Baylee. If anyone has any questions, if you have any questions, if I missed anything that you want me to show, please let me know.
Yeah, Jeff, I think that was a perfect overview. Thank you so much. I do want to give a minute for Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll moderate, and then you can unmute to share additional context when we're going over your question. But as we wait for some questions, I did want to remind everybody that we will be going into a summer break for All Up in Your Small Business, and we will be returning in August. So while we will miss hanging out with each of you on these webinars, I did want to share one of our partner webinars. So the North Carolina U.S. SBA District Office will be hosting a webinar to highlight some certifications that they offer, such as AA, Woman-Owned Small Business, Veteran-Owned Small Business, and Hub Zone certifications, which are offered through the SBA NC. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for that in the chat. But this online event will really help to give small businesses the competitive edge that they need when they're doing federal contracting. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the chat. And this will also be included on the email that we send out after the fact. So just a reminder that if you did join late today, we'll also send out that email so you have a chance to rewatch Jeff's entire presentation. But again, just giving a few minutes if anybody has any Q&A, and then Jeff, if you did such a great job that no one has any Q&A, we'll
I know.
here in just
I'll take it as a compliment.
Yeah, I think that was a great overview. This is a data tool that we use both when we're working with new companies looking to move here, existing companies who are already here, and it's great information, as Jeff said, coming from Lightcast. It's a very well-trusted source for us.
Yeah, and the other thing I should have pointed out is that EDP&C is a client of ours as well. So it also, there's consistency. They're using the same data that ENC Alliance is using. So if someone's over on EDP&C and is pulling up the same data, they're not going to see conflicting, results there.
I'm getting some thank yous in the chat, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, but I'll include Jeff's information on the email that we send out.
Absolutely.
So if you do have any follow-up questions for Jeff, please feel free to reach out. So while we do only have a few minutes left today, I did want to take a moment to thank Jeff again for sharing his time and expertise with us.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you to all of you for attending. We hope that you have several takeaways from our data tool that you will be able to put to use and to help you grow your businesses here in Greenville-Pitt County. And just a reminder again, we will be on summer break until August. The U.S. SBA is hosting a wonderful webinar in the meantime, though, that I'll include when I send things out. And we're excited to hopefully see you again in the future. Thank you so much, Jeff. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Baylee. My pleasure.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.